Evan Mitchell arrived at the cafe, convinced he was about to meet Rachel, the blonde lawyer his sister had been raving about for weeks. At 32, Evan had reluctantly agreed to a blind date after his sister Sarah had worn him down with persistent texts about how perfect Rachel was for him. Sarah had shown him photos, built up Rachel's accomplishments, and promised this wouldn't be another awkward disaster like his previous setups. What Sarah hadn't mentioned was that Rachel used a wheelchair. Evan saw her sitting at the outdoor table, exactly matching the photos Sarah had shown him. Blonde hair, beautiful features, wearing a cream-colored blazer. But the wheelchair beside the table was a detail his sister had conveniently omitted. His first reaction was anger. Sarah had set him up, manipulated him into this date without giving him full information. His second reaction was shame. That his first reaction had been anger, but predominantly he felt trapped and uncomfortable, standing there on the sidewalk while Rachel watched him process the situation. Their eyes met, and Evan watched something shift in Rachel's expression. She'd clearly seen his moment of shock and the emotions that followed. "You must be Evan," Rachel said, her voice pleasant but guarded. "I'm Rachel, and based on your expression, I'm guessing your sister didn't mention that I use a wheelchair." Evan walked over, feeling his face flush. "No, she didn't. Okay, I'm sorry. I was just surprised. It's nice to meet you." "You don't have to do this," Rachel said directly, her blue eyes assessing him. "I can see you're uncomfortable. My friend Claire set this up with your sister. Okay. And clearly they thought it would be better to blindside you rather than give you all the information up front. You can leave. I won't be offended. I'm used to this particular situation." Something about her matter-of-fact tone, the way she was giving him an out without making him feel like a villain, made Evan pause. "What do you mean? You're used to this? People find out I'm in a wheelchair, and suddenly I'm not dating material anymore. I'm a charity case or an inspiration or a burden they're not willing to take on. Your sister probably thought if she got you here, you'd be too polite to leave. She was trying to help, but honestly, this approach usually makes things worse." Rachel started to move her wheelchair back from the table. "So let's just call this a failed experiment. No hard feelings." "Wait," Evan said, surprised by his own response. "Can we at least have coffee? I mean, we're already here, and I'd like to know why my sister thought we'd be a good match, beyond her apparent belief that I needed to be tricked into meeting you." Rachel studied him for a long moment. "I'm not looking for pity, and I'm not interested in being someone's good deed or teaching moment about disability acceptance. If you're staying because you feel obligated or guilty, please don't. I'd rather be alone than be someone's uncomfortable obligation." "That's fair. But what if I'm staying because I'm curious about the woman my sister has been pestering me about for 3 weeks straight? She clearly thinks we have something in common beyond what I can see right now. And what can you see right now?" Evan decided on honesty. "I see someone who's very direct and doesn't seem to need anyone's approval. I see someone who's giving me an easy out instead of making me feel like an asshole for being surprised. And I see someone who's clearly dealt with enough awkward situations, okay, like this, that she's developed a very efficient exit strategy." A small smile touched Rachel's lips. "Not bad. Most people would have just mumbled something polite and run. I considered it, but I'm also hungry, and my sister will never let me hear the end of it if I don't at least have coffee with you. So can we start over? Hi, I'm Evan Mitchell. I'm a physical therapist. I have an over-involved sister who likes to meddle, okay? And I really should have asked more questions before showing up today. Rachel Thornton. I'm a civil rights attorney. I have an over-enthusiastic best friend who thinks everyone needs to be paired off, and I probably should have demanded full disclosure from her before agreeing to this setup." Rachel's expression relaxed slightly. "Since we're being honest, I need to know, are you going to be weird about the wheelchair? Because if you are, let's just skip the coffee and save ourselves an hour of awkward conversation." "I honestly don't know yet," Evan admitted. "I've never dated someone who uses a wheelchair. I don't know the etiquette or what I'm supposed to do or not do. I'll probably mess up, but I can promise I won't treat you like you're made of glass or like you're some kind of inspiration just for existing. It's more honesty than I usually get. Most people either treat me like I'm fragile or ask really invasive questions about my medical history within the first 10 minutes. Rachel gestured to the empty chair. Okay, you can stay, but I'm ordering the expensive coffee, and if this goes badly, you're paying. Fair enough. They ordered coffee and settled into conversation that started awkward but gradually became genuine. Evan learned that Rachel had been in a car accident 4 years ago. That left her with spinal cord injury and permanent paralysis from the waist down. She'd been a rising star at her law firm, engaged to be married, living what she called the expected life. The accident changed everything. My fiancé left 6 months into my recovery because he couldn't handle my new limitations. The firm made sympathetic noises, but quietly pushed me out because I wasn't the right image anymore. I lost my mobility, my career trajectory, my relationship, and most of my friends in one fell swoop. Rachel's voice was matter-of-fact, but Evan could hear the old pain underneath. So I started over. New firm that actually values what I can do rather than focusing on what I can't. New apartment designed for accessibility. New life that doesn't apologize for not meeting other people's expectations. That's incredibly brave. It's survival. Brave would be doing it by choice. Rachel took a sip of her coffee. Your turn. Why is your sister so invested in your love life? Evan told her about his previous relationship, how his ex-girlfriend had left him because he'd chosen to become a physical therapist instead of following his father into the family investment firm, how his family saw his career as wasted potential, how he'd been essentially written off as the disappointing son who chose helping people over making money. Sarah's the only one who gets it. She thinks I need someone who values the same things I do, who doesn't measure success in dollar signs. Evan hesitated, then continued honestly. She probably thought we'd understand each other. Two people who've been judged for not fitting other people's expectations. That's actually pretty insightful for a setup, Rachel admitted, even if the execution was ethically questionable. They talked for 3 hours, long past when they'd finished their coffee. Evan found himself genuinely enjoying Rachel's sharp wit and direct communication style. She didn't sugarcoat or perform politeness. She said what she meant, challenged his assumptions, and made him laugh with stories about terrible dates and legal battles she'd won as the afternoon faded. Evan found himself not wanting the date to end. Can I see you again? Like an actual planned second date where we both go in with full information. Rachel looked at him skeptically. Why? Because you feel guilty about your initial reaction. Because I've had more interesting conversation in 3 hours with you than I've had in 3 months of dating. Because you called me out, gave me an out, and then gave me a chance anyway. Because I'd like to know if this connection is real or just a novelty of an unexpected situation. Evan met her eyes. But I need to know, do you actually want to see me again? Or are you just used to accepting whatever interest comes your way because options are limited? Rachel laughed, a real laugh that lit up her face. Okay, that's fair and honest. Yes, I'd like to see you again. You didn't run, you didn't ask invasive medical questions, okay? And you treated me like a person instead of a puzzle to solve or a burden to carry. That's honestly a pretty low bar, but you'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. They exchanged numbers and made plans for the following weekend. As Evan walked away, he called his sister. Before you ask, yes, I'm furious you didn't tell me Rachel uses a wheelchair. That was manipulative, and you knew it. But you stayed, Sarah said, cautiously. Stayed, and we're going out again. But Sarah, if you ever pull something like that again, I'm done with your setups. Rachel deserves better than being someone's secret that gets revealed as a surprise. She deserves to go into dates knowing the other person chose to be there with full information. You're right. I'm sorry. I just knew you'd make excuses if I told you up front, and I really thought you two would connect. Despite your terrible strategy, not because of it. Over the following months, Evan and Rachel dated carefully and honestly. Rachel taught him about accessibility needs, about the difference between helping and hovering, about how her wheelchair was a mobility aid and not a tragedy. Evan shared his own struggles with family expectations and finding value outside traditional success metrics. I thought dating you would be complicated because of the wheelchair, Evan admitted one evening. But honestly, the wheelchair is the easy part. You just need doorways to be wider and ramps instead of stairs. The complicated part is learning to communicate with someone who won't let me get away with vague pleasantries or unspoken assumptions. You demand honesty, and that's actually harder than any physical accommodation. Is that a complaint? Rachel asked. It's a compliment. I've spent so much time trying to be what other people wanted that I forgot how to just be myself. You won't let me hide behind comfortable personas. It's terrifying and amazing. You're welcome, Rachel said with a smile. For the record, dating you is complicated too. Not because of who you are, but because I keep waiting for you to realize I'm too much work and leave. I keep expecting you to get tired of accessibility issues, or frustrated by the extra planning required, or embarrassed by people staring. Rachel, I'm a physical therapist. I've spent years working with people who use wheelchairs, people with all kinds of disabilities and mobility challenges. The wheelchair doesn't scare me or bother me. What scares me is how much I care about you, and the fact that I almost walked away from this because I was surprised and uncomfortable for 5 minutes. But you didn't walk away. You stayed. You chose to stay, and you keep choosing to stay. That matters more than your initial reaction. A year after that awkward first meeting, Evan proposed to Rachel in the same cafe where they'd met, at the same outdoor table. Rachel figured out what was happening when Evan knelt down to her level instead of standing over her. Rachel Thornton, you called me out on our first date for being uncomfortable, and then gave me a chance anyway. You taught me that love means being honest, even when it's hard, that accessibility is about respect, not pity, and that the strongest people are often the ones who've rebuilt themselves after losing everything. You showed me what courage actually looks like, and you made me want to be brave enough to deserve you. Will you marry me? Rachel said yes through tears, and half the cafe applauded. Sarah, who'd been hiding inside, waiting for the proposal, came running out, crying and apologizing again for her terrible setup strategy. You were right though, Evan told his sister. We were perfect for each other. You just needed to trust that I was capable of seeing that without being tricked into it. The wedding was beautiful and fully accessible. Held at a venue Rachel had helped choose because she knew exactly what features were needed. In his vows, Evan spoke honestly about that first meeting. I showed up to a blind date expecting one thing and found something completely different. My first reaction wasn't great. I was surprised, uncomfortable, and briefly angry at being set up without full information. But then Rachel looked at me and said, I'm not looking for pity, it's honesty. Okay? And I realized I'd found something rare. Someone who wouldn't let me get away with comfortable lies or polite fiction. Rachel, you taught me that real love isn't about perfection, but about choosing someone every day despite fear and uncertainty. You showed me that the wheelchair is the least interesting thing about you. That strength comes in forms I'd never imagined. And that being worthy of your love means being brave enough to be completely honest. I promise to keep choosing you, to keep learning from you, and to build a life where accessibility means making room for everyone to participate fully. Rachel's vows made everyone cry. Evan showed up to our first date, visibly shocked by information he should have been given up front. He could have left. He should have left. Instead, he sat down and asked if we could start over. He admitted he didn't know how to date someone with a disability, and then he learned instead of assuming. He asked questions, made mistakes, and kept showing up anyway. Evan, you proved that the right person sees past limitations to possibility. That love means adapting, rather than demanding others adapt to you. And that being tricked into meeting someone can sometimes be the best thing that ever happens. I promise to keep being honest, even when it's hard. To keep teaching you about accessibility while learning from your patience. And to never forget that you chose to stay when you could have walked away. The man who'd been tricked into dating a paralyzed woman discovered something more valuable than comfort or expectation. A partner who demanded honesty. A Kia who taught him that love means choosing someone with full knowledge rather than romantic fantasy. And who proved that the best relationships are built not on initial attraction, but on the conscious decision to keep choosing each other even when it's complicated, inconvenient, and requires learning entirely new ways of moving through the world together. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below about a time when an unexpected situation led to something meaningful. Your stories inspire us all.